लंदन लिविंग विद रिजवान रशीद के साथ रिजवान रशीद आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर है। अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाजरीन, फेडरल इलेक्शन का दौरा है। अब हर जगह हर तरफ बैनर्स, पोस्ट कार्ड्स और डोर नॉकिंग देख रहे होंगे। ये जो नया इलेक्शन है, ये जस्टिन ट्रूडो ने उनके टर्म में अनाउंस कर दिया है। हमने पिछले ही दिनों फेडरल डिबेट जो इंग्लिश और फ्रेंच की देखी, उसमें बहुत सारे हॉट इश्यूज के बारे में बात की गई, whether it's a climate issue, whether it's dealing with pandemic, housing affordability or racism and Islamophobia. आपने बिल 22 की भी हॉट टॉपिक पे डिस्कशन सुनी। इसी सिलसिले में हम लंदन में होने वाले इलेक्शन और डिफरेंट राइडिंग्स में जितने लोग हैं उनके साथ मुलाकातें कर रहे हैं, उनका पर्सपेक्टिव आपको शेयर कर रहे हैं। जी हाँ, मुझे मालूम है कि फेडरल इलेक्शन में जो भी तरजीहात होती हैं वो पार्टी बेस्ड ज्यादा होती हैं, इंडिविजुअल बेस्ड कम होती हैं। लेकिन बहर सूरत हमें जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव हम सेलेक्ट कर रहे हैं, उनके नजरियात, उनके पर्सपेक्टिव, उनके ख्यालात जानना बहुत जरूरी है उन सर्टन एरियाज में जो हमारी कम्युनिटी, हमारे लंदन, हमारे शहरियों की के लिए मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट है। ऐसे ही ख्यालात लेके हम ये इंटरव्यूज कर रहे हैं। आज जो हम जिस शख्सियत को दावत देने जा रहे हैं उनका नाम है अफीज अजीबो। अफीज अजीबो ऑल्सो एन इमिग्रेंट फ्रॉम नाइजीरिया। इस वक्त वो थेम्स वैली डिस्ट्रिक्ट बोर्ड में एज अ IT प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर काम कर रहे हैं। और इनकी खुसूसी बात कि जब से ये लंदन में आए हैं, मूव हुए हैं, इन्होंने कम्युनिटी इन्वॉल्वमेंट में बहुत काम किया और इतना काम किया कि 2018 में इनको आई एम लंदन का अवार्ड दिया गया। आई एम लंदन का अवार्ड उन लोगों के लिए मखसूस है जो कम्युनिटी में डिफरेंट जगह पे हैवी हिटर्स कहलाए जाते हैं। हफीज अजीबो से हम आपको तारुफ कराएंगे और उनसे मिलवाएंगे। और मेरे नजदीक 3 इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक हैं जिस पे हम बात करेंगे और मैं सबसे इसी टॉपिक पे बात कर रहा हूं। नंबर 1, टॉकिंग अबाउट इस्लामोफोबिया। जो जून 2021 में लंदन में मैसेकर हुआ, मैं उसकी आवाज सुनना चाहता हूं कि कैसे डाइवर्सिटी एंड इंक्लूजन की बेस पे, कैसे सिस्टेमिक रेसिज्म की बेस पे, या कैसे आउटराइट इस्लामोफोबिया पे इन लोगों के नजरियात, ख्यालात हैं। और इस बारे में ये पर्सनली एज एन MP क्या करेंगे। उसके अलावा जो आप बहुत बात सुनते हैं और हमारे जितनी भी कम्युनिटी ने मुझे फीडबैक दिया, वो हाउसिंग अफोर्डेबिलिटी पे है। बहर सूरत मैं कहता हूं कि इमिग्रेंट जो हमारे साउथ एशियन नेशनल से हैं, उनके लिए हाउसिंग अफोर्डेबिलिटी मेरा ख्याल है वो इतना इम्पैक्ट नहीं कर रहा करंटली। लेकिन लोग इस बारे में परेशान हैं कि हमारे बच्चे आइंदा आने वाले चंद सालों में कैसे अफोर्ड कर सकेंगे, और या जो ये बच्चे किसी दूसरे शहर में यूनिवर्सिटी, कॉलेजेस या पढ़ाई या जॉब के लिए जाएंगे तो वो रेंट की अफोर्डेबिलिटी कैसे कर सकेंगे। हाउसिंग अफोर्डेबिलिटी है। और तीसरी जो एक बहुत बड़ी और बड़े जमाने से ये बात चलती आ रही है, वो लंदन में जॉब्स। लंदन में रिटेल ओरिएंटेड के अलावा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग या मनी मेकिंग जॉब, और इस जॉब्स के सिलसिले में इस सेक्टर के हवाले से ये लोग क्या नजरियात रखते हैं, ये लोग कैसे फेडरल फंडिंग को इनिशिएट कर सकते हैं, ये लोग कौन से प्रोजेक्ट जो शायद लंदन की आवाम को नहीं मालूम, ये ला सकते हैं। लंदन में रहने वालों को हाउसिंग अफोर्डेबिलिटी तो है, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ होमलेसनेस, एपिटॉइड, ड्रग अब्यूज और वायलेंस का भी बहुत इसमें शुमार है। तो इस सिलसिले में मैं इनसे बात करूंगा कि जॉब मार्केट को कैसे कर सकते हैं। लंदन के लिए खुशाइन बात ये कह सकते हैं कि अमेज़न का जो बड़ा एक साउथ वेस्टर्न के लिए सेंटर वो यहाँ पे बनने जा रहा है, जिससे जॉब्स के मौके और बढ़ेंगे। तो आइए चलिए मिलते हैं अफीज अजीबो से। अफीज अजीबो साउथ लंदन और एल्गन काउंटी से लिबरल पार्टी के उम्मीदवार हैं। इस काउंटी में या इस राइडिंग में इससे पहले कंजर्वेटिव की कैरन है, वो जीत चुकी हैं। उनसे भी आपसे मुलाकात अगले प्रोग्राम में करवा रहे हैं। तो चलिए आइए मिलते हैं Afeez Ajibowu. Welcome to the show, brother Afeez Ajibowu. And today we have the pleasure of meeting one of a liberal candidate from London Elgin County. He is Afeez Ajibowu. Afeez Ajibowu come to us with the whole sort of experience, education, expertise, and a heart. He is desire to help other people. Afeez, who is an immigrant from Nigeria and currently serves as an IT project manager for Thames Valley District Board, and also part as a supervisor in the training department of school board. But also, he has been recipient of the I Am London 2018 award for his number of community services, and that tells you a whole lot. But let's welcome him and ask him who is Afeez. Welcome to the show, Afeez Ajibowu.
Thank you so much, Rizwan. Thank you for having me on the show. And assalamu alaikum to everyone watching from home. My name is Afeez. As Rizwan rightly said, I'm originally from Nigeria. But beyond that, I'm someone who believes passionately in this country, the community, because this is home. This is our country. And I've got a huge footprint of commitment and giving back to the community. I believe very passionately, and you will see those footprints in several domains. You will see it in mental health care. You will see it in diversity and inclusion within the city. I still serve on 2 subcommittees of the city's diversity and inclusion strategy process. I am on the board of the London Family Court Clinic, which has a team, a very large team of qualified psychologists who intervene on behalf of families and children running through the court process. Like you rightly said, I won the award, the I Am London Award, recognizing some of my heavy contributions back to the London, Greater London area. So it's not by accident that I decided to come into politics, to extend that contribution to our country and our community. Thank you.
Definitely, that footprint shows that you are involved in the community, and that's how you secure the nomination for the Liberal seat, and definitely heart of many here in London already. Now, you must be going on canvassing. You're meeting people all around within your constituency. The people, whether it's outskirts of London, Lambeth, or surrounding areas. If I may ask you in a broader terms, and you as an immigrant, what is the most pressing, I would say, issue or a thing that is for the Canadian immigrants at this time?
Thank you so much. So the pandemic that we've had over the last 18 months is actually thrown its own mix into some of the traditional or the core issues that most people, have faced pre the pandemic. And you can touch some of those. Obviously, housing is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
The opioid epidemic that we are seeing all across our towns and cities. I was talking to someone who works in one of the prisons, EMDC specifically, and she was almost crying. I was speaking with her yesterday while door knocking at the number of people who are currently in jail, who shouldn't be in jail, who are not getting any help, and that majority of those are actually people who are dependent on opioid and currently struggling. But you see that even on the streets, you drive through any downtown, Dundas in London. So, like I said, there are some of those big issues that we had pre-pandemic, whether it's homelessness, whether people falling through the crack, and the bigger issues that you see around people just surviving, tied to childcare and all those. But within the immigrant community, I think one of the biggest issues that I'm also passionate about is diversity and inclusion and access to services. So diversity has a tie to racism and discrimination. whether it's systemic discrimination or racism, I mean, which sometimes is not conscious, it's not obvious to the average person who is not living through that experience. But for most immigrants, these are some of the biggest issues, just even settling down and being able to access services, whether it's job integration services, whether it's housing. People get turned away even from rental, and you wouldn't know why. It might be because even, the first approach at the door, your accent throws you back, that, you're probably not even given the opportunity. So, like I said, for me, these are some of the big issues that we don't see, that you wouldn't see clearly on too many party platforms, but that locally, I'm committed to bringing to the front burner, as an MP for Elgin, Middlesex, London riding.
And you rightly so talk about epidemic or mental issue in housing, which is talk of the town or all across Canada.
Yeah.
But what you really touch is diversity and inclusion, systemic racism, and I wanted to call it outright as Islamophobia. What Justin Trudeau said when he was here on June 8th here in London, talking about when the massacre happened on the Hyde Park on June 8th, where the 3 generation was swept from us and taken to heaven. What do you think that you can, as a member of parliament in Ottawa, can impact on the topic of Islamophobia?
Thank you so much. As a Muslim myself, with a clear, Muslim name, first name, it's clear that you would have, at some point in one's life, also experienced, some form of Islamophobia or discrimination on the basis of your religion. That is obvious. So, I mean, that unfortunate incident in London here will be difficult to erase from our memory. It's close to home. Yeah. That stretch of road where the family, was wiped out. I was walking through that stretch in the evenings through the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So, I still go through there, and that comes back to one's head. It's difficult to wipe, to forget that kind of. And the question is, over time, what bred that hate into that young man's head? What pushed him to the point where he felt it was okay to do what he did? But let's not even go that far back. Let's go to the response and the posturing that we saw. We have political leaders who came to London here for all the photo ops. Yeah. But at a few hours earlier, had refused to condemn or even recognize that we have Islamophobia in Canada. Mm-hmm. And we have those on record. People refuse to vote to even recognize or condemn that we have. And I don't want to bash the other political parties. And if you even bring it home to the Elgin, Middlesex, London riding, in 2017, after 6 people were killed in the Quebec mosque attack, yeah. the MP representing the riding refused to condemn in the House in voting, said no, that it wasn't Islamophobia. So what I want to do as a Muslim who has lived through these experiences, these unpleasant realities, is to bring sufficient attention to the fact that we do have hate, that we have a lot of work to do in our communities, mm-hmm. that we see. I mean, and I don't want to be sensational. In the last 4 days, some of our supporters have received letters, hard copy letters, dropped in their doorsteps, mm-hmm. because they put up an Afeez sign on their on their lawn, saying, "This is a conservative riding. We do not welcome your politics here. We thought we welcome you into our neighborhood, but we do not welcome you here with this politics." 2 of those decided to be anonymous. They didn't want to raise any issue because they still live in the neighborhood and they don't want any problem, right? So the question is this Islamophobia? Is difficult, right? But this is the reality of so many families who are, Muslims. So back to the Liberal Party and what I'll be leveraging within our platform in ensuring that we tackle Islamophobia. Like I said, locally, I'm going to be raising attention. I'm going to be raising all the noise that ensures that we bring. But even nationally, we had this summit. Was in 2020. It was in July. It was a national summit on Islamophobia. Yeah, I think it was in July now. When I was in July. Nice. And if you look also at the platform of the party, we had this heavy funding for tackling Islamophobia under the Canadian Heritage funding. And you would see, a slew of organizations that the Liberal government consciously supports in funding. Like you have some of those, the Somali Canadian Association, Etobicoke, and all that. You could see all those details online. But for me, locally, is to build the platforms that ensures that everyone can see into Islam and see that the average Muslim is not a dangerous person. He's just expressing his own religion in Canada as provided for freely. The average human being is beautiful, irrespective of your religion. So what does that mean? I'll be promoting the use of, religious spaces as communal spaces. Mm-hmm. So I want Muslims to go into churches and sit and have meetings and share lunch and dinner and understand what the Christian faith is like. I also want Christians to come into the mosques. Mm-hmm. Come on Fridays. If you don't want to join prayer, come after prayer and share, in drinks, in coffee and all that, and ask questions about the, about the Holy Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and some other things tied to our religion. Ask questions about how we pray. So I want those to happen. Community meetings, bring them into the mosque. Open the doors. If there are going to be soup kitchens, communal soup kitchens, come into these spaces. Let's talk. So I think gradually we can begin to reduce some of the phobia that people have for other religions. And then, but that's just, practical on the surface thing. But beyond that, I think it's education. And now we can tie into curriculum. Incidentally, I work with the school board, right? Yeah. And the education of our kids, also plays a very major role in how people shape their thoughts and opinion about other people, races, their religion. So I'm going to be driving consciously for the inclusion of these sensitivities into, learning across the spectrum, K to 12 particularly, so that there's a much broader understanding of other people. We live in a beautiful country. We live in some of the most amazing spaces in the world. I mean, who would drive around Canada and wouldn't love to live in this country, right? So for me, those are unfortunate things that I think we can get over. And it's a lot easier to get over those if you vote in someone who understands that we do have hate, we do have Islamophobia, and we do have work to do, but that we can do it, in this community. And that's where I stand in this space. Thank you.
That's I'm deeply impressed by your different ways to tackle this, because you talk about the systemic racism, how to include other multi-faith religion integration to help them open up, not between Islam and Christianity, Hinduism, and all the other faith, but in fact to us as Muslims to expose to the other religions, so we all kind of know each other and respect as human as well. And lastly, I think the much needed is education. And if I look back on the events of June, I see the London has outpoured the love, respect, and care to all the Muslim community when they heard it. So there is a love beneath everybody as human, and that we have seen it. I'm not talking about politician party, but I'm talking about London itself. So we have seen it. So and multi-faith people, all religious leaders came in and supported this cause and actually condemned it as well. But I wish if it continues, I wish it's just not a one event when something happened and everybody come aboard, but it just continuity that help us stay focused and stay organized and united on the front of this racism, whether it's accepting the diversity from everybody or whether it's including everybody in this together. And whatever the faith, whatever the religion they have, or culture or race, they can live peacefully in London. That is much more needed. I'm sure it actually shook you as it shook me and a lot of other Muslims here in London. It shook more of our kids that had a more roots than me, because I and you both are immigrant, but they have a complete root here. Absolutely. And that shook them even further. Now, let's switch the topic of fees, and you mentioned something about pandemic, and in pandemic, one of the biggest talk, and we have seen in the debate itself on national level about housing affordability. As and I know as a party, they have their own stance and they have their own views aspect of it. What are you seeing as a candidate going out meeting people about housing affordability?
Thank you. And I've knocked in the last 3 weeks. I've probably knocked close to 2,000 doors in between the different components of the riding. And I've spoken to so many people. So from the seniors who are genuinely worried for the younger folks, for some seniors, it's currently that some of them are struggling as well. Either because they're spending a huge portion of their income, which is constantly not matching up with inflation on housing. For some, it's about the worry for those who have built the equity all through their life in their home. For them, it's worry for the younger folks who are seemingly going to be unable to get on the property ladder. Because clearly, typically, the convention is that, you get into a workplace, you start off as a small family, or get into trade or something, you build up savings, and then you buy your first home. And then it's not by accident that most mortgages are 25, 30, 35 years. And so that over that course, you will have paid off if you're managing your finances very well. And then you will have built some equity. And then when you're downsizing in old age, you would have something saved aside to spend in your old age. So you're not poor as a senior citizen. So I've had those stories from people who are genuinely worried for younger folks, and it's clear. Property prices, especially new homes, have become totally, out of sync with not just the trend, but with the realities of, income. Typically, the banks wouldn't give you any loan bigger than 4 times your gross income. So typically, property prices in an environment to be 4 times the median income for that environment, typically, because the banks don't want you to spend more than 30% or 40% of your income on housing. But the reality is that even for those renting, so most people are spending close to 70% of their income on housing. For so many who have bought properties, their mortgage load or carrying cost, which is their mortgage and bills and heating and all that, is close to 60-70%, of their income for most families. So most people are home poor or house poor, as they used to say it in banking.
Yeah.
That for me are the major issues that I've seen. But there's also a tie to availability of housing stock. We have a blessed nation that is growing, and we are attracting immigrants from all over the world. But I don't think we've had growth in housing stock matching those realities of how quickly we grew at some point over the last 4 or 5 years in some of the major urban centers across the country. But if I narrow it down to London area, St. Thomas, for instance, so Financial College moved to St. Thomas, has a campus in St. Thomas, and rightly, so many people would choose some of the. So we haven't had the balance between some of those shifts and housing supply, especially for those who are living at the base of the pyramid, those who are not too well off, who need housing costing between 700 and 1,200. That is a major problem. The other one is the issue of homelessness. Those who just couldn't have, get on the ladder, get into housing at all, either because they've just come out of prison, they don't have a job and all that, or because they're addicted to something and they are not receiving all the attention that they need, so they're not in any employment, and people who have mental health issues. And so you can see it's a very broad spectrum within our housing market. But if you look at the platform of the party into this election, there are 4 major planks under the assuring a home for everyone. One of them is unlocking home ownership for the middle class, and that has so many other elements under it anyway. So, which ensures that when people get out of school or into trade, a few years after that, they can get into the property ladder. But they can't do that if a typical detached home or townhouse is costing $1 million. So, our government, the Labour government, is also taking action against speculators. If you check on our platform, you will see that. And so that includes where, for instance, where a realtor is representing both the buyer and the seller, there must be full disclosure. Because you get some of those plays, right, where it's representing the seller, the buyer, and then knock and then jack up the prices, and it's artificially inflated. That is going to be cut. Of course, we're also going to be building promoting the building of 1.4 million new homes within this post this election. So let me not go too far, and of course, protecting people's rights. Let me not go too far. What I've seen is that for an MP, you should be grounded in the solutioning that is local. You know, we tend to be too academic and make it sound very big, and you know, all the buzzwords that you see in big budgets. In any case, I've sat in, you know, strategic meetings at board levels, but I'm grounded in solutioning that is practical and local. So what does that mean? We have social workers, we have the city, we have councillors, we have mayors, we have MPPs, we have MPs. Their job is to fix issues. So my thinking is we should be able to sit together, irrespective of your party affiliation, after election, to say, okay, so how many people are homeless in St. Thomas today? And pull the social worker out, get out on a bus, get out with the police, and pull them all together. So this person has associated mental health concerns. Okay, let's deal with that person. Individual X has this issue, so let's deal with individual X. How many people are homeless subsequent to that in South London? Oh, okay. So let me talk to 2 major renters in South London. Let me talk to Drulo Holdings or Holdo or whatever. I need 12 units subsidized by X amounts. And we'll do the transfer funding from the city for these individuals for 6 months. Get them off the street for me, please. And then Holdo could put them in units, okay? And it comes with rule. You cannot do drugs in these premises. You cannot do and all that. Okay, but concurrently, I'm going to get the mental health worker. Can you work with this individual for 6 months for me? And can you also work with this individual to get them resumes and get them jobs or training? So you are doing a multi-agency solutioning that's not built on academic thinking, but that is grounded in solutions. I've said it countless times. It doesn't make sense. It's a shame on our collective. It's a collective shame for one person to be on the street in Canada. I came from overseas. I became a Canadian. I mean, at no point was I ever on the street, right? So there's no reason why one person should be on the street in this beautiful country, a G7 country for that matter. Thank you.
See, I love that aspect of it. What you mentioned about the housing and practical solution for that, I wish everybody can, and I really impressed by one word you said, the academic part of it and buzzwords of it, but how we can really make it and implement. And when the implementation, if you can do it in small segments, that is going to change. I love the part of it these days, what I'm hearing, that the changes in housing affordability or changing in rules to the 2 of them is really stuck to me, and I think that definitely can make a change. One is from proposed one to limit the buying power for the immigrants or non-resident who were buying and kind of inflating the market itself. And number 2 is open bidding, which you just mentioned, that instead of the closed bidding, open bidding, so everybody know who has bid, how much, and why it is. And then, and I think the 3rd one will also kind of limit that, and that is the mandatory house inspection, because that also kind of kill a lot of buzz for the new homeowners who just ride along and got into this bidding but never was able to get that house which they ever dreamed of. And this is a bigger message, and I think most of the people are the people who are homeowners. They are not worried for themselves like me, but I'm worried about my kids' affordability at the end, or the people who don't have one and they're still renting, their rent going up. And they are looking at it, how we're going to keep up with that, because they don't have that high paying job like Toronto, but they had homes prices kind of comparable to now GTA somewhat, and then same thing with the rent. Now, I'm glad you have kind of a little bit practical solutions, and I'm sure if there's a little bit of persuasion, the builders who's making billions of dollars here with all the lands in London should be able to participate in eliminating homelessness or affordable housing here in London. Afeez, let's, you touched one point, and I wanted to go back into this London job market.
All right.
London has been a service industry somewhat, and I remember back in the days when I moved here, there were only two biggest employer at that time. One was London Health Sciences, and another one was whether it's Fanshawe or Western University. Now we see a little bit more activity in there. But as a London MP, what do you see London job market, so people kind of are creating money here, not retail oriented, but other job, or what you can do if you will be selected as a member of parliament in Ottawa?
Thank you so much, Rizwan, for that question. So interestingly, I'll shed some light on my background in answering that question. I have a science background. I have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I have a master's degree in business administration. I have a master's in information system and a postgraduate in project management. So I understand science, obviously. I also understand business. I've also worked in the private sector as much as the public sector, close to 27 years, really. And some of those in different sectors, from telecoms to manufacturing, and I sat on the board of global companies as a director, managing close to $1 billion top line numbers. So there are two things that I see that I've put on paper that I think we can work with. One of them I love is backward integration. Mm-hmm. The other one is innovation commercialization.
Okay.
So let me expand. We have some beautiful institutions in Southwestern Ontario, mm-hmm. And you can split that from, say, Chatham into Waterloo, and but locally we have Fanshawe, we have Western, we have Kings, and all these other private institutions around us, including trials, and if you check some of their courses, mm-hmm. these are credible, future-proof job prep courses, mm-hmm. right? Two, we have some of the most beautiful farmlands in Ontario, or in Southwestern Ontario. Incredibly hardworking farmers, whether family-owned farms or commercial, big corporate farms and all that. So that also tells me that we could establish a very strong nexus between all those opportunities and the attraction of investments into our riding. So whether it's in agro-processing, whether it's in any other thing that leverages all those strengths locally, mm-hmm. whether it's in producing something that's just a small component of car making. Amazon is just opening up here, right?
Yeah.
We should start thinking, what will Amazon need? What would be the impact of that on housing? What would be the impact of that on food supply, on transportation and all that? And then get all those quickly knocked together and start solutioning. So, but in terms of innovation commercialization and ensuring that when people finish universities in our area or finish from Fanshawe, that they're not running to Toronto to look for jobs, mm-hmm. will be to establishing a nexus between outputs, courses, projects, and researches coming out of those institutions and bringing them into business incubation. Mm-hmm. We have some lovely small business incubation opportunities here all around the riding, including St. Thomas. We have in London here. And then we have some, very lovely business parks that are totally underutilized. If you go to South London, you will see, down by further down by Wonderland and by Warncliffe down. Yeah. By Wellington, left of Wellington, you will see all that down. So many of those premises are underutilized. The same way, if you go to St. Thomas, if you also come even upward into London, you will see so many of our business parks, small business parks, really, in the true sense. Mostly you will see, either people importing a few things from overseas, floors, marble tiles and all that. But I want to be able to establish a connection between courses at Western, mm-hmm. whether it's in software engineering, whether it's in biotech, producing just a very small component of something else that ties to, even in telecoms, a very small, part that say one of the big telecom companies could use on their NMCs, their network management centers, on their transmission stations, and all. Because we have these lovely courses here, but establishing that relationship is incumbent on funding and ensuring that we do attract the national funding or the federal funding to get those things going locally, so that when people are in their final year of some of those courses, they're already smelling the opportunities to establish a company. And so they can start pulling some of their colleagues on the same course. What are you thinking? Should we start registering a course in our final year? I mean, a company in our final year, because there's this funding that will give us $50,000 to set up this company, and I will get some rebate on office rent for 6 months. Or we could work from home, and we can do this and set up this logistics and all that. So for me, having those backgrounds, especially in business, will give me the opportunity to be able to mentor those discussions or conversations, such that we can create, and there is a tie between those and response to the climate emergency that we have. The more we create those future-proof jobs that are most times green and eco-friendly, the more we are, achieving in our journey to get into the net zero emission by 2050. And that's a commitment that you will see on the Liberal platform. But like I said, if you have an MP that is unable to establish a nexus, not locally, a connection locally between the opportunities and what your platform is saying, you just be, warming the bench in the House and be voting for the national platform. You're not going to be able to come back into your riding and implement anything. You'll just be waiting for the federal government to pay that subsidy to your riding, and everyone is happy. And then the next election cycle comes, and then you talk about the subsidy that was paid to everyone. But I want to be able to talk about what I've done locally, even if it doesn't exist on a party platform. I want to be able to sit with the LEDC in London, right? I want to be able to sit with Fanshawe, with Western, and create business opportunities for graduates of those institutions to further creating jobs locally. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. As a business coach and corporate trainer, I can really see the vision, practicality of it, because most often we've been discussing with the small business community, because of the pandemic, they have to diversify, they have to pivot their normal way of business and doing it differently. But now with coming with the Amazon and talking about that, perhaps maybe casino in the future, that is asking people to rethink and how we can be part of that business, upcoming a major business, and how we can create jobs or businesses around it to complement or supplement that business so you can thrive off that. But if you are, as an MP, thinking about that, creating that stream and leveraging what circumstances are, you definitely on a right track. Afeez, I mean, great discussion so far. I truly enjoyed, a learner conversation that you giving to us. Now let's drop off that. Tell me, how do you like London? How's your kids are? How where they go to the school, and how do you really enjoy it here in London so far?
It's a lovely city. So an interesting thing was when I came to Canada, I originally settled in the GTA Milton, but I then said no, I didn't want to live I wanted a not too big, not too small city that offers all the beautiful education and other opportunities that you need to thrive. And I looked at the map and I dropped a pin, London, and I came here. And my friend said, "You're mad. You don't know anyone in London. What are you going to do there?" I said, "I'm going to thrive there." And the rest is history. So, but interestingly enough, when my first daughter was ready for university, and university was one of the reasons I came here.
Yeah,
she decided to go to Ottawa instead. And so, but London, is one of the best places anyone could, choose to live in Canada. Not because it's a growing, resilient, diverse, and vibrant city on its own. It's got everything that the other big cities, in that sense, like Toronto, also we have a lovely malls here. You got everything you want to buy here. You have the theaters. I enjoy going to watch plays and follow some of those companies around as they travel and do their shows. I do drive. I love driving, so I do drive around at the London area, especially through the pandemic. And I also like going to our parks. We've got lovely parks, especially straddling the two sides of the Thames River. So I do enjoy going to those parks and just playing by the riverside sometimes, and just walking. I also enjoy doing that. But beyond that, we've got beautiful spaces in libraries across the riding. In St. Thomas, that's our community engagement spaces. If you go into the library in most of our towns, you'll find very small space. Of course, we have internet, so you could see, but it's also a space for people to share stories and ideas. And you will see most of the libraries, you also have language mentoring sessions, immigrants learning to speak English or French, being mentored. You'll find those in most of the libraries. I've done a couple of those. So for me, London offers the opportunity for any immigrant to thrive, or any Canadian to achieve, their optima or their maximum in life, and their dreams and goals and aspirations, to bring up families and to just enjoy life. We've had a very lovely summer, right? And even with the pandemic, our reopening gradually, I think we've been able to still enjoy as much as we could in this summer. Whether it's communal barbecue spaces, with COVID compliant and all that. But it's just a lovely, lovely area generally.
Absolutely. I think back in the day when I was deciding to move from GTA, London was one of our choice, and more importantly because we were romantically involved in London, and thinking about that London, UK and London, Canada, kind of somewhat similarities, but I actually came to learn how London was actually built to be the capital of Canada before the Upper Canada and Lower Canada merged, and then the Ottawa was announced. But London was actually built by that reason, and that's one of the romantic reasons for me to moving into London. Afeez, we have a great discussion on some tough topic and some burning issues, what everybody's thinking about it. We wanted to wish you good luck in your campaign, and we wanted to give you that platform to share your ideas and your perspective. What is the last message you want to leave to our audience who are looking to vote on coming September 20th?
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed this very engaging conversation with you. They're grounded in some of the issues facing us as a community, and that's what I enjoyed. It wasn't about political posturing, really. So I just want to ask people by getting into politics originally was really about even getting people interested in the polity. It wasn't about running. I didn't know I was going to run for office. I was simply wanting to get people, to have conversations, to go out to vote, to check the party platform. So I'm going to say, people just go out and vote. But before you vote, read the different party platforms, get to understand the candidates who are representing you beyond the platform, because that's crucial. Because you're voting for someone to represent your interest. And 4 years in a lifetime is huge. So you want to be sure that that person has credibility, has a strength of purpose, has the capacity, whether in education and experience, and the passion to represent you credibly in committee assignments. If you don't, you can't give what you don't have. In the House, you're not going to sit in committees where you won't be able to make any contribution. Like I said, I've got a science background, so I can sit on committees and discussions on the environment, on innovation, on science and technology, on broadband pricing, which is a major issue in Canada. Competition in our telecom industry, we have some of the highest rate, of telephony and broadband costs in the world. You have someone who can sit in committees and discussions and votes and bills concerning businesses and how you empower small businesses, how you empower farmers. I come from a farming family as well. I know some of the farmer issues in the riding, whether it's tied to the concessions we made under some of the agreements we made, whether it's tied to migrant workers, whether it's some of the concessions they're asking for in fossil fuel rebates for drying corn and all that, and some of the other issues, right to repair farm machines. I'm very close to this community, whether it's issues around diversity, inclusion, housing, the opioid issue, getting people out of poverty, rural transit. There are too many to fix, really.
Yeah.
So what I can just tell is you do have someone who is passionate and who understands those issues and who can approach them from a standpoint of, but the most important thing is even just go out and vote and, let your interest be represented by someone in this coming parliament. I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for with us and sharing your perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Afeez Ajibowu, a person who actually demonstrated already in his involvement in community and is ready to take that lead to the next biggest stage in Ottawa, representing you with his clear thought. And I love that part of it when people have very clear perspective of their own. Yes, regardless of the biggest party and their own stance on different things, but I love the people who really have their own perspective and how they're going to go back onto the ground level, how they can make a change. Please vote on September 20th, whoever it is, your nominated candidate. If you have any questions about a candidate of your choice, pick up the phone or email them and ask questions and clarify before September 20th. Keep watching London Living with Rizwan, and we're signing it off with one thing: go vote, go use your vote. और नाजरीन, ये था हमारा आज का प्रोग्राम। आपने हफीज अजीबो से मुलाकात की, उनके ख्यालात सुने, उनको आपने पता चला कि हफीज अजीबो इज अ वेरी लर्न्ड एजुकेटेड पर्सन और उन्होंने डिफरेंट नाइजीरिया से यूके से जीटीए और जीटीए से लंदन को अपना घर बनाया और यहाँ पे बहुत सारे काम किए। उन्होंने अपना इस्लामोफोबिया के बारे में बताया, उन्होंने इमिग्रेंट के प्रेसिंग सिचुएशंस के बारे में हमने उनसे बात की, हाउसिंग अफोर्डेबिलिटी और उसके साथ साथ लंदन जॉब मार्केट में की। उनके जो छोटे छोटे एक्शनेबल आइटम्स हैं वो बड़े मजेदार मुझे लगे। ये वो प्रैक्टिकल हल हैं जो कि हर एक के ज़बान ज़द-ए-आम होने चाहिए और जस्ट हमें ये चाहिए कि हम लोगों के लिए काम आ सकें। तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने मल्टी फेथ इंटीग्रेशन और एजुकेशन टुवर्ड इस्लामोफोबिया बात की। I hope that makes sense to everybody. It is happening. I think it continues to happen, and that will help everybody to understand and accept another faith, another religion, another culture, another race, another language to be part of this multicultural Canada. इसी के साथ इजाजत दीजिएगा। मुझे अपनी फीडबैक अपनी आरा से जरूर आगाह कीजिएगा। देखते रहिए लंदन लिविंग विद रिजवान रशीद। इसी के साथ आपका होस्ट रिजवान रशीद इजाजत चाहता हूं अगले हफ्ते के लिए। अल्लाह हाफिज।